I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I'm about to tell you is something I never planned on saying out loud. Not to my children, not to my pastor, not to anyone. But I'm 95 years old now, and I've learned that the things we keep quiet are almost always the things that do the most damage. So I'm going to tell you about the $230,000 I lost. Not to a scammer, not to the stock market crashing, not to some disaster I couldn't see coming. I lost it because of something I carried inside my own chest for decades. Something I wore like a badge and called it dignity. I called it strength. I called it independence. But when I finally sat down in a chair old enough to be honest with myself, I had to admit what it really was. It was pride. Plain, quiet, stubborn pride. And if you are anywhere near 60 right now, or you love someone who is, please do not scroll past this. Because I'm going to tell you exactly how it happened. And I'm going to tell you the one sentence I wish someone had said to me before it was too late. And if this kind of story means something to you, if it feels like something you'd want to come back to, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe to this channel. There are a lot of us here who are sharing things we should have said years ago. Now let me take you back. I was born in 1929. I grew up during the Depression. And if you know anything about that time, you know what it does to a person. You learn that you do not ask. You do not lean. You do not let your neighbor see the hole in your shoe because the moment you do, you become someone who needs help. And where I came from, needing help was one small step from being nothing at all. My father worked with his hands from before sunrise until after dark, and he never once asked a single soul for a dime. When things were hard, and they were hard often, he would sit at the kitchen table and be quiet. That was how he handled it. Quietly. Alone. And I watched that. I absorbed it the way a child absorbs everything, not consciously, not with intention, but completely, bone deep. By the time I was grown, I believed in my soul that a man who handles his own money is a man who respects himself. I believed that asking a financial advisor for help was something you did when you didn't know enough, and I believed I knew enough. And I did know some things. I'll be fair to my younger self. I knew how to save. We bought our house in 1958 and paid it off in 1971. We never carried credit card debt. We raised 3 children on a school teacher's salary and a part-time bookkeeping job my wife Ruth held for 22 years. We were not wealthy people, but we were careful people. And there is a difference. By the time I reached 60 in 1989, we had built up what felt like a real nest. Ruth and I had roughly $310,000 in savings and investments, some in CDs, some in mutual funds I had picked myself by reading the financial pages on Sunday mornings with a cup of coffee and what I believed was good judgment. I felt proud of that number. $310,000 in 1989 felt like standing on solid ground. It felt like everything my father never had. It felt like proof. And then the 1990s came, and everything started to move faster than I could read the Sunday paper. I remember a conversation I had with a man named Gerald at our church. Gerald had been a bank manager for 30 years, and he'd recently retired and started doing independent financial consulting. He was a gentleman, not pushy at all. He came up to me after a service one Sunday and said very casually, "Harold, you ever think about sitting down and taking a real look at where your money is positioned? Things are shifting pretty quickly." And I smiled at Gerald. I shook his hand. I said, "I appreciate it, Gerald. I think we're in pretty good shape." And that was the end of it. He never brought it up again. He was too polite to push, and I was too proud to pull. That conversation took maybe 45 seconds. Those 45 seconds, in hindsight, represent a fork in the road I didn't even know I was standing at. What I didn't understand, what I refused to let myself sit down and actually learn, was that the investment landscape in the early 1990s was not the same world I had been navigating in the 1970s. The products had changed. The tax laws had changed. The way retirement accounts worked had changed in ways that had enormous consequences for someone in my exact situation. I was still thinking like a man in 1972. I was making decisions with a map that had been drawn 20 years earlier, and I was doing it confidently, which made it worse. A confused man might ask for directions. A confident man walks straight into the wrong town. Between 1989 and 1998, I made 4 major financial decisions entirely on my own. I moved a significant portion of our savings into individual stocks I had researched myself. I delayed rolling over an old pension account past a deadline I didn't know existed, which triggered a tax penalty I still feel sick thinking about. I declined to increase our contributions to a tax-advantaged account because I didn't fully understand the new rules around it. And rather than ask anyone, I simply chose the path I already knew. And in 1996, I turned down a financial planning session that our bank was offering free of charge to customers over the age of 60. Free. I turned down free help because sitting across a desk from someone and saying, "I need guidance," felt too much like surrender. By the time I was 70, our $310,000 had not grown the way it should have. After adjustments, after penalties, after the missed opportunities that don't show up as line items but are just as real, after all of it, we were sitting at approximately $80,000 less than we should have been. And that was only the beginning of the accounting. I want you to hear this next part carefully, because this is where the story turns in a direction I didn't expect. When I was 72, Ruth got sick. It was not a short illness, it was a long one, and it was expensive, and it required decisions I was completely unprepared to make. Not emotional decisions. I was prepared for those in the way any husband is prepared, which is to say, not at all, but willing. What I was not prepared for were the financial decisions, long-term care, insurance gaps, the way that certain assets are counted and certain assets aren't when you're trying to protect a spouse who needs facility care. There is an entire world of financial and legal strategy specifically designed to help families in exactly our situation. And I did not know a single person who was navigating it for us, because I had spent my entire adult life ensuring that I navigated things alone. I remember sitting in a hospital corridor at 2 in the morning and a social worker came and sat down next to me. She was a young woman, maybe 35, and she asked me very kindly if we had a Medicaid plan in place, if we had spoken with an elder law attorney, if I knew about the spousal protection rules. And I looked at her and I said, "I have a financial background. I've been managing our money for years." She nodded. She was too kind to tell me what her face was saying. She gave me a pamphlet. I put the pamphlet in my coat pocket. I did not call any of the numbers on it. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand that the pride doesn't announce itself. It doesn't feel like pride in the moment. It feels like competence. It feels like protection. It feels like love, even. Because you believe that handling it yourself is how you take care of the people you love. That is the cruelest trick of it. Ruth passed in 2001. She was 68 years old. And after the grief had become something I could carry instead of something that carried me, I sat down with every piece of paper I owned, and I started to add it up. Not just what we had, but what we had lost. What had leaked out through the cracks of my certainty. The tax penalty from the pension rollover. The gains I had missed by staying in instruments that were no longer performing the way they once had. The long-term care expenses that a proper Medicaid plan might have significantly reduced. The estate fees from the absence of a plan we should have had. When I finished adding, I sat at that table for a very long time. The number I kept arriving at, the total of what should have been there versus what was $230,000. Now I am going to tell you something, and I need you to sit with it before you move past it. That number is not abstract. That number was my daughter's ability to not have to work at 68. That number was the security I could have handed to my grandchildren. That number was the version of my last 30 years that didn't involve choosing between heating bills and medications. That didn't involve calling my son with a catch in my throat and asking if he could help me with something I was embarrassed to name. That number had a life. It had a face. It had futures attached to it that never happened because I was too proud to sit in a chair across from someone who knew more than I did. I did eventually get help. I was 74 years old, and I finally sat down with a proper financial advisor, a woman named Susan, who had spent 30 years working specifically with retirees. And I remember in that first meeting, She said something that I have thought about almost every day since. She said, "Harold, the people who come to me at 75 always tell me they wish they had come at 60. And the people who come at 60 always tell me they wish they had come at 50. The best time is always a little earlier than now, but now is still better than never." I had to look away from her when she said that. I looked at the window. I'm not too proud to admit it. What Susan helped me understand in the years that followed, the years I had left, is that asking for help with money is not the same as admitting you are not intelligent. It is not the same as weakness. The people who manage money well are not always the people who know the most. They are the people who know what they don't know. There is a kind of wisdom that takes decades to arrive at, and it is this: expertise in one area of life does not transfer automatically to another. I was a good teacher. I understood children. I understood how learning worked, how to hold someone's attention, how to explain a difficult thing in a way that landed. None of that made me a retirement income strategist. None of that made me an elder law specialist. I was applying my confidence from one room to a completely different room and calling it the same building. It wasn't. There are things I want you to walk away from this with, not lessons written on a chalkboard, but things that I have felt in my actual body from living through them. The first is that the financial world changes faster than pride does. The strategies that served your father, or that served you at 40, are not automatically the strategies that will serve you at 60 and beyond. Tax law changes. Retirement account rules change. Healthcare costs have changed in ways that would be genuinely difficult to believe if you hadn't lived through them. The map must be updated, and updating a map requires someone who has been watching the territory change in real time. That is not you. If money management is not your full-time profession, it is also not me, and it never was, no matter what I told myself. The second thing is about the word asking. We have attached shame to it, some of us, especially those of us who grew up in times when asking meant exposing a wound. But asking a financial advisor for guidance is no different than asking a doctor about a symptom, or asking a mechanic about an engine sound, or asking anyone who has spent their professional lifetime studying a thing that you have not studied. It is not weakness. It is the accurate recognition of how knowledge works. You would not perform your own surgery because you'd watched enough medical programs. You would not argue your own case in court because you'd read enough about law. Do not manage your retirement alone because you've read enough Sunday morning financial pages and called it sufficient. The third thing, and this is the one I want to leave you with, the one I want you to carry, is that the cost of pride is almost always paid by the people who love you. I did not only lose $230,000, I lost the security I wanted to give to Ruth. I lost the ease I wanted to give my children. I lost the peace that should have come from decades of careful saving. The irony of protecting your dignity so fiercely is that the people who matter most to you are often left holding the weight of it. They do not say so. They love you too much to say so. But I know, and in the quiet of being 95 years old, with more looking back than looking forward, that is the part that stays with me, not the money, the people the money should have reached. So if you are 60 or close to it, I am asking you directly, the way Gerald should have been more direct with me, the way I should have let him be, please do not wait. Find someone who works specifically with people in your season of life. Ask the questions you think you should already know the answers to. Let someone look at the whole picture, not just the parts you're comfortable showing. You have spent a lifetime earning what you have. Let someone who has spent their lifetime learning how to protect it help you protect it. And if today you felt something in this story, if something here sounded like a voice you recognized, a mistake you've already made or one you can still avoid, please share it with someone you care about. That's all any of us here are really trying to do. We're trying to say the things we should have said sooner, hoping they land in time to matter. Subscribe if you want to stay with us. We have more to tell, and none of it is finished yet.